During Christmas morning, my parents handed my younger brother car keys wrapped in a shiny red bow and told me I was independent enough already. Everyone laughed, but I felt something tighten inside me. I am 28, a project manager at a logistics company in Seattle, and I have worked hard for every dollar I own. My brother Jake is 24, still living at home, working part-time at a music store, and spending most of his money on sneakers and concerts. Our parents have always treated him like the fragile one, the dreamer who needed protection from the world. When we were kids, I would get scolded for forgetting to take out the trash while Jake got praised for remembering to brush his teeth. I left for college on a bus with 2 bags and a scholarship, while they gave Jake their old car to make his commute to community college easier. They said I was mature, responsible, the one they never had to worry about. It sounded like a compliment at first, but over the years, it began to feel like a punishment. That Christmas, I came home hoping something might finally change. I had taken a week off from work, booked a hotel nearby, because Mom said the guest room was being renovated and brought expensive gifts for everyone. A smartwatch for Dad, a designer purse for Mom, and concert tickets for Jake. I even wrapped them neatly, hoping the effort would mean something. For the first time in years, I wanted to feel like part of the family again, not just a visitor they bragged about of friends. The morning started perfectly. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Mom was humming along to Christmas songs, and Dad was already filming us on his phone like he always did. Jay came down the stairs in pajama pants and messy hair, grinning like a kid. He sat beside me, joking that he hoped this year's gifts wouldn't be socks again. I laughed, thinking he was exaggerating. Then Mom clapped her hands together and said it was time for the big surprise. Dad pulled a small velvet box from behind the tree and handed it to Jake. Everyone leaned forward as Jake tore off the wrapping paper. When he opened it, a set of car keys glinted under the lights. Mom squealed, Dad cheered, and Jake jumped up shouting no way. I clapped weakly, trying to hide how hollow it felt. I thought maybe they had something for me too, something that showed they saw me beyond the label of being the responsible one. But then Mom turned toward me, still smiling, and said the words that burned into me like ice. "We didn't forget about you, honey. We know you're independent enough already." She said it like it was praise, like I should be proud of being the son who didn't need anything. Everyone laughed. Even Jake looked uncomfortable for a second before tossing me a half-hearted grin. I forced a smile, pretending it didn't sting, pretending that my chest didn't feel like it was caving in. The rest of the morning blurred. That night, I promised myself that the next Christmas would be different. I would stop showing up hoping to be noticed. I would stop waiting for someone else to give me what I had already earned. In that quiet room, with the faint sound of carolers outside, I made the decision that changed everything. It was time to stop being the responsible son they remembered and start becoming the man they never saw coming. The room filled with the sound of laughter and clinking glasses while Jake jumped up and wrapped his arms around Dad. He shouted that he couldn't believe it, his voice echoing with excitement as Mom wiped tears from her eyes. I sat there pretending to tie my shoelace, my fingers trembling slightly as I heard Dad say he deserved it for working so hard. Through the window, I could see the car sitting in the driveway, a bright blue Honda Civic shining under the winter sun with a big red bow on the hood. Mom said he had earned it, her voice proud and loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Earned it. The words rang in my head like an insult wrapped in sweetness. Jake worked 10 hours a week selling guitars, slept till noon most days, and borrowed money from me more times than I could count. A month ago, I had sent him gas money just so he could make it to work. Now I was watching him get rewarded for the kind of effort that barely counted as responsibility. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile and stepped outside when Dad called me over. He handed me his phone and asked me to take a photo of them. I lifted it, the screen reflecting their glowing faces. Jake was grinning ear to ear, standing proudly beside the car while Mom leaned into him and Dad rested a hand on his shoulder. Behind the camera, I felt invisible. The flash went off, capturing a moment they would frame on the mantle while I remained the one holding the lens. When we went back inside, Mom reached into a drawer and handed Jake an envelope. He tore it open and pulled out cash, laughing when she said it was for his insurance and gas. Then she turned to me with a gentle smile and said they had thought about getting me something big but decided against it since I was doing so well on my own. Her words carried the tone of a compliment, but they felt like a dismissal. I asked if that meant I didn't deserve something because I wasn't failing. She blinked, unsure how to respond. Dad's voice cut in, calm but firm, telling me not to make a competition and to be happy for my brother. I nodded, pretending to agree, but inside my thoughts churned like a storm. I excused myself and went upstairs to my old room. The air smelled faintly of dust and old memories. My childhood posters still clung to the walls, corners peeling, and the trophies on the shelf were covered in a thin layer of neglect. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at them, remembering how proud I had been to earn those awards without ever needing help. Back then, I thought being independent made me strong. Now I realized it only made me easy to overlook. As I sat there, voices drifted up from downstairs. Jake was still thanking them, saying he couldn't wait to take his friends for a ride. Mom's laughter followed, soft and proud. I thought about every holiday I had spent working overtime to pay my bills, every birthday that passed with a card and a handshake while Jake got balloons and cake. It wasn't about the car or the money. It was about never being the one they wanted to care for. To them, my success meant I had outgrown affection. I stood up and began packing my bag. I folded my clothes slowly, listening to the faint hum of Christmas music coming from the living room. Each song felt emptier than the last. I zipped the bag shut and took one last look around the room. The space that had once been my comfort now felt like a museum of things that no longer belonged to me. When I came downstairs, Mom asked where I was going. I told her I had to leave early for work. She smiled and said she understood. Dad waved from the couch, too busy showing Jake how to check tire pressure to say goodbye properly. I waited for a moment, hoping someone might ask me to stay, but no one did. I picked up my coat and stepped outside into the cold. The air bit at my face, and my breath came out in pale clouds as I walked to my car. Through the window, I could see my parents hugging Jake again while he jingled the new keys in his hand. For a second, I almost laughed at how predictable it all was. I started the engine, let the heater hum, and drove off. The lights of the house disappeared in the rearview mirror, swallowed by the falling snow, leaving only the quiet sound of the road and a hollow calm that felt too familiar. I drove back to Seattle that night through a curtain of snow, the road quiet except for the hum of my tires against the frozen pavement. The city lights shimmered in the distance like a promise, sharp and cold against the dark sky. For once, the loneliness that usually followed me home didn't feel heavy. It felt clean, like something had been washed away. Somewhere between the white lines of the highway and the rhythm of my thoughts, I made a decision. I would stop chasing their approval. I would stop trying to prove I was worthy of the love they reserved for my brother. From that night forward, I would build my own version of family, one that didn't make me feel like an outsider at my own table. When I got home, I turned off my phone and sat in silence. The apartment felt too still, but that stillness became fuel. The next morning, I arrived at work before sunrise. I started volunteering for projects no one else wanted, staying late, pushing harder. While others were taking long lunches, I was in meetings or learning new software to improve our systems. My manager noticed. Within 2 months, I had been promoted to senior project lead. Along with the title came a pay raise and a company car. When I saw it parked outside the office for the first time, a brand new electric sedan gleaming under the rain, I laughed. The irony was almost poetic. That car represented everything I tried to earn from my parents, but never could. Recognition, respect, proof that I was capable. I could almost hear Mom's voice saying she was proud, but this time, the validation didn't come from her. It came from me. A week later, I drove to my parents' house unannounced. I wanted closure, not confrontation. The neighborhood looked exactly the same, the lawns trimmed, the same holiday wreath still hanging on their door months after Christmas. They were outside when I pulled up, and the first thing I noticed was Jake's blue Civic sitting in the driveway with a flat tire and a dented bumper. I parked beside it, the hum of the electric engine fading into the cold morning air. Dad looked up first. His eyes went straight to the logo on the front of my car, his brow lifting in surprise. He asked when I had gotten it. I told him it came with my promotion. He smiled awkwardly, the kind of smile people give when they're proud but don't know how to show it without feeling guilty. Mom came out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her expression curious. I didn't want to rub anything in. That wasn't the point. I walked up to her and handed her a small envelope. She looked at it, confused, and asked what it was. I told her it was for the home repair she had mentioned last year, the roof that leaked every winter. Inside was a check big enough to cover everything. For a moment, she didn't move. Her eyes flicked between the envelope and my face, like she wasn't sure whether to thank me or apologize. Jake came outside then, rubbing his eyes, still half asleep. He saw my car and gave a low whistle. He asked if he could take it for a spin. I smiled and said, maybe another time. He laughed, thinking I was joking, but I wasn't. I wasn't angry at him anymore. I just didn't care enough to compete. The rivalry had always been one-sided anyway. Mom finally spoke, her voice quieter than usual. She said I didn't have to do this, that I should spend my money on myself. I told her it wasn't about money. It was about peace. I looked at her and said she had been right all along. Independence really does pay off. The words hung in the air longer than I expected. Dad shifted his weight, clearing his throat. Jake looked uncomfortable. I hugged Mom before anyone could reply. She hesitated, then wrapped her arms around me, tighter than she had in years. It wasn't forgiveness, and it wasn't a reunion. It was acknowledgement, and that was enough. I got back into my car and glanced in the rearview mirror as I drove away. Mom was still standing on the porch holding the envelope. Dad had turned toward Jake's car, inspecting the flat tire. For the first time, I didn't feel the sting of being the responsible one. I felt free. The city skyline rose in the distance as I merged onto the highway, the electric hum of the car blending with the sound of my heartbeat. By the time I reached home, the snow had started falling again, soft and quiet. I parked the car, looked out at the street below, and realized something simple but powerful. Independence had always been my burden. That night, it became my victory. 6 months later, life barely resembled what it had been. The air in Seattle felt lighter, cleaner, as if the universe had quietly rearranged itself while I was too busy moving forward to notice. My days began early, with the sunrise spilling through glass windows of my new apartment overlooking the water. The silence that used to feel like loneliness had become peace. My career had taken off faster than I expected. I was managing teams across the country, flying to conferences, and being introduced as one of the youngest project directors in the company's history. For the first time in my adult life, I felt seen, not because someone gave me permission to be, but because I had earned it on my own terms. Jake, on the other hand, was following a different path. He had lost his part-time job at the music store a few months after Christmas. The company cut hours, and he never found the motivation to look for another one. The Civic, once shiny and new, sat idle in their driveway until he sold it to pay rent. My parents called me a few times during that period, their voices soft with concern, asking if I could help him get back on his feet. Each time, I gave the same calm answer. I told them Jake was independent enough already. The line carried weight now, a mirror of the words they once used on me. There was no anger in it, only clarity. I visited home a few times during those months. The first time was for Dad's birthday. The atmosphere had shifted. Mom was quieter, her humor tempered by guilt she didn't know how to express. Jake wasn't there. He had moved out to live with a friend across town. When I arrived, Mom hugged me tightly and asked about my work. Her eyes wandered over my tailored suit and the new car parked outside, the same car that had once made Dad pause with envy. I told him everything was going well, that I was traveling often for business and meeting incredible people. The conversation was polite but heavy, as if they were trying to catch up with a version of me they had never truly known. The second visit came unexpectedly. I had been in the area for a client meeting and decided to stop by. Mom greeted me with tea and cookies like she used to when I was a kid. We sat at the kitchen table in the same seats we had occupied for years, but something felt different. The distance that had once defined our relationship wasn't as sharp anymore. Maybe time had softened her edges, or maybe she had started to understand the quiet ache she had caused. She asked if I was seeing anyone. I told her I wasn't. That work kept me busy. She nodded, smiling faintly, and said she hoped I would find someone who appreciated how hard I worked. I didn't need her approval anymore, but hearing her say it still felt good. That night, as I drove back to the city, I realized how much had changed inside me. I wasn't angry at them anymore. The resentment that once fueled my ambition had burned out, replaced by something steadier. Gratitude, maybe your acceptance. They had taught me what it meant to be strong by forcing me to stand alone. For years I thought independence meant isolation, but now I understood it differently. It wasn't about building walls. It was about building worth from within. A few weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I woke to a message from Mom. It was a photo of their driveway. The space where Jake's Civic used to sit was empty, the concrete clean and bare. Her message was short. "We're proud of both our sons." I stared at the screen for a long moment before smiling. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't closure. But it was something, a small acknowledgement that maybe, finally, they saw me not as the one who didn't need love, but as the one who had learned how to give it to himself. I saved the photo without replying right away. Instead, I made coffee, opened the curtains, and stood by the window watching the water glisten under the morning sun. For the first time in years, the memories of that Christmas didn't sting. They simply existed, part of a story that had led me exactly where I needed to be. They say family should treat you equally, but sometimes they teach you through imbalance what fairness really means. That Christmas, I didn't just lose a gift. I lost the illusion that love had to be proven through pain. What I gained was far more valuable. Independence wasn't about doing it alone. It was about knowing when to stop waiting for someone else to notice you and choosing to notice yourself instead.